Welcome to Diversity Matters. This program is designed to highlight the diversity-related activities throughout New Hanover County Schools and the greater Wilmington community. I'm Valita Quattlebaum, Chief Communications Officer for New Hanover County Schools. This month, we are highlighting community efforts in stopping violence, creating awareness, and unity around the issues of violence. Today, we're delighted to welcome some representatives from the Domestic Violence Shelter and Support the Port to discuss how those organizations are involved in stopping violence in our community and how they partner with our schools. This is going to be a very informative edition of Diversity Matters, and I can't wait to hear from our exciting panel of guests. So don't go away. We'll be right back after this short break.
Start your day with New Hanover County Schools, the morning show. This Rise and Shine program will put a smile on your face and a spring in your step. Best of all, you'll start the day a little smarter. The morning show features an exciting 6-hour mix of exclusive features, cooking, entertainment, news, science, math, and more. New Hanover County Schools, the morning show, educating all viewers to achieve today and tomorrow in a global community. Only on this channel.
Welcome back to Diversity Matters. This month is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we are highlighting community efforts in stopping violence, creating awareness, and unity around the issues of violence. Today, we are delighted to have as our first guest, Mrs. Andrea Stowe, who is an advocate and outreach coordinator, and Mr. Rick Houston, prevention specialist with the Domestic Violence Shelter and Services here in Wilmington. Thank you all so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So this is a very interesting topic, and I want to start with you, Mr. Houston. Can you tell us what you do for the domestic violence program and what does it entail?
I'm the prevention specialist there. Actually, my position is funded by the CDC, Centers for Disease Control, with a grant that looks at preventing intimate partner violence. Really primary prevention, that's preventing something before it occurs. And so my role is to prepare community events, or whether it's in the school, whether it's in faith communities, whether it's in business, to look at ways to look at what we call risk factors, things that are precursors to intimate partner violence, and put protective factors in place to prevent the violence before it starts.
And just help me understand, is this a prevalent issue in our community? What are some of the parameters around it?
It's very prevalent, and that's why the Centers for Disease Control has really taken this issue on, because when we look at 1 in 4 relationships are impacted by domestic violence. And
1 in 4?
1 in 4.
Wow.
1 in 4, and so we look at, and it's also the precursors of teen dating violence. When we look at the risk factors, what we call the social ecology model, when we look at it from a public health standpoint, whether, on the individual impact, things that we learn within, or relational impact, things that in relationships that we see, whether it's at home or other relationships, community factors, what are some of the things we see within our community, and also society. So what are those precursors or the sanctions around or rules around preventing that type of violence? And so what we look at it, when we see those risk factors, what are some things that we can put in place to prevent the violence before it occurs?
Okay, so what a huge mission, Ms. Stowe. Tell me how you all go about helping create awareness, and specifically with the school system, how do you work with us?
So at Domestic Violence Shelter and Services, we try to provide a range of services. So we do the crisis intervention, but we know that it's so important for people to know those services exist and then do the prevention piece. So I'm so lucky as outreach coordinator and an advocate to see all of those pieces. We start very early on. We work with Smart Start to do some child care prevention stuff, and then we work in the schools with Hands Are Not for Hitting and Words Are Not for Hurting. And we have such tremendous collaboration with the social workers, the counselors, the teachers, and they're so receptive. Rick and I travel across the state, and we work with different people, and they have such an issue with getting that piece and being allowed
That's
to
the elementary school level?
Yes.
Okay.
For mostly kindergarten through 2nd, we've worked with 3rd grade, we've done some programming with older, but that's really where we're working on. Not only do we talk about those things? Like, kids know that hands are not for hitting, words are not for hurting. So we're working on strategies. How are healthy ways to express those emotions? Because those emotions are okay. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's not okay to hurt people when you feel those things. And if we are not modeling the healthy ways to communicate those feelings, then we're not giving them the skills to handle it. So that's what we're really working on. So we do those. We do them in conjunction with the schools. Rick works, and as well as Rape Crisis does the program Shifting Boundaries. And I love the way that Rick has done that as one school where he's working on changing the climate in that school with middle schoolers. I've been privileged enough to help with that, Shifting Boundaries. And we're talking about teaching kids that they have the right to boundaries and they have to respect people's boundaries, and how do you articulate when someone crosses those boundaries. We also worked on the most amazing project where we do hotspot mapping. Where do you feel safe? Where don't you feel safe? How do you communicate that? And we're sharing that with the school. We have a leadership council where the school's hearing that from the students. In the high schools, we do students taking action for relationship safety.
Well, that's what I want to ask you about the high schools, because that's when you see dating start to become an issue and relationships start to get a little more serious, I guess, than middle school. So how do you help a high school students who may not know what to do if their relationship takes a bad turn?
So one of the most amazing things that we've learned from not only prevention and outreach, but from working really closely with some of our partners in the schools, we have not only done these programs, but we have been reached out from teachers, from our partners there, that they want us there because they know these things are happening for our students. We know that it's 1 in 4 households, but it's 1 in 3 students have been in an abusive relationship. And that is males, females. They are not immune to abusive tactics in relationships just because you're a male, just because you're a female. It's happening to all of our students. So we need to be in there talking about red flags, talking about behaviors that make you feel uncomfortable, talking about bystander intervention. What happens if you see these things happening? How do you respond to them in a safe way so that you don't put yourself at danger?
Right.
So the best part about this program is not only are we facilitating it in the schools, but at New Hanover High School, we've partnered with the service learning students so that the students are actually helping facilitate it as well. They've become the messenger.
What are they doing?
So they are helping develop the curriculum. We have the broad topics, and then they are helping come up with some of the tools and materials used to teach it. They are helping co-facilitate. They're up there in front of their classmates sharing the messages.
Because when kids teach each other, I think it has much more of an impact.
I love recognized voices, but we know that helping students find their own voice is most important.
Right.
And one of the things that we talked about is a couple years ago they developed PSAs that went to the whole school. Each day they had a different part of the lesson that went to the entire student body, and it really had an impact, and we used it to educate the entire state. Rick shared it with a national conference, and so students in our community are educating students across the country, and that's pretty amazing.
That is amazing. Rick, I want to ask you a question about males. Is there a stigma about men in abusive relationships about coming forward, and do you see that with the boys in our schools?
Well, when we look at males, and when we look at what I call collective socialization of manhood, and that is that domestic violence is learned behavior. We look at, I do a lot of training with males. I'm fortunate to be one of the trainers to train professional athletes as well. And there's a video I show sometime of a little boy, he's 3 years old, you know, whose dad is taking him to get his vaccination. And he tells him that big boys don't cry, big boys don't cry. And he gets his first shot, and the tears start coming down the little boy's eyes. And he said, big boys don't cry. And he gets his second shot, and he begins to cry. And his dad is telling him, big boys don't cry. So at an early age, what his dad is teaching him is that to mask your emotions. So when we look at manhood and some of the things that we're teaching, so when we look at those individual, also relational things, that unwritten rules around manhood, is that some of the things that we're learning is teaching those things. And sometimes we're not really thinking about it, we're not subconsciously thinking about it, but we're teaching unhealthy manhood. So our goal is to work with young boys. And some of the PSAs that we did with New Hanover High School were boys who were engaging other boys about their behavior and about the roles of young men around healthy manhood. One of the things that we always say is that when we look at intimate partner relationships, over 90% of the violence is, all men are not abusive, but over 90% of the violence perpetrated comes by the hands of men. And so if we want to end the violence, we've got to engage other men about holding men accountable, also teaching healthy manhood. So we have a major role with engaging men about reducing the violence. And also men who are not abusive to use their voices, use their platform, use their influence to engage other men so that we can reduce the violence.
Okay. So what are some of the challenges that you all face when you're trying to get this message out of violence prevention and awareness?
It's a difficult topic to talk about. And because we know it's prevalent, we know it's happening in our community, and we know it's something that comes with a stigma and a shame. So we know bringing it up is going to be a difficult thing, and not everyone wants to talk about it. So we do a lot of outreach in different unique places, and that's why we need to be out here talking about it. We need partners such as the ones we're going to talk to next, and hopefully people are going to continue to talk about it. So we're so grateful to be here.
Okay. Well, it sounds like the domestic violence and shelter and services has been very active and doing a lot of good work in our community for a long time. Next, we will speak with a gentleman from Support the Port. They're involved in violence prevention efforts as well, so please stay tuned. Diversity Matters. We'll be right back.
Get connected with your school system. Your School News covers news that matters for parents, guardians, and Greater New Hanover County. Stories about preparing students for success in a changing world. Stories where students are achievers.
Internship we pretty much made a vehicle from spare parts, and at first we made it so it just moved, and then we made it so it was an electrical vehicle.
Stories of teaching where every child yearns to learn.
Today is all about STEAM. STEAM is kind of the key word to tying art into science, technology, engineering, and math.
Your School News brings viewers more than 8 hours of school news and information, reporting on what's happening in the district, what students are learning, how the school system operates, and beyond. Your School News, only on this channel.
Welcome back to Diversity Matters. We have as our guest Mr. Cedric Harrison, founder of Support the Port. He's here to discuss how his organization is involved in violence prevention and awareness. So Mr. Harrison, Support the Port is a fairly new organization. I don't know much about it, but I know you've done some great things. Tell us a little bit about it.
So Support the Port will be 2 years old at the end of October. It first started as something that I just really wanted to do on the side. I was still living in Atlanta and working there doing marketing strategy and consulting. And so one thing led to another. We first started off with our Stop the Violence One Sign in the Town campaign, and from there we started to do a lot more community service programs towards community violence and just towards community enrichment and community ownership. And we did a lot of entertainment events as well to try to create a space for young professionals. I feel like that's missing a little bit here in Wilmington.
Right. I know you did a historic coloring book. Just a brief bit about that. Tell me about that.
So we did a historical coloring book called Wilmington, North Carolina in Color, which is about the African American history, specifically focusing on the buildings. We're going to work on more editions. And the next edition will be about the people, but we want to focus on the buildings. It was a little bit easier to cover generations of history that have walked through those hallways or what have you. And so we were able to launch it around December time. I worked on it with a UNCW professor, and we worked on it with some kids that were that were going from the 8th grade up to the 9th grade.
Right.
And so we used their summer program to teach those kids about the African American history, and then also teaching them how to trace drawings or what have you, and transfer those into digital prints that you actually see in the coloring book today. And when you look in the coloring book, you can see a list of all of the students that were involved.
Right.
But we were able to sell at least 3,000 of those books and go to different schools, after-school programs, nursing homes, and rehabilitation centers, and share the history, the rich African American history here in Wilmington, For me, it was yeah.
Okay, so let me segue that into what you're doing around violence prevention. I know being involved in something like that, those are our students, so that's a good project to keep them involved. But what else are you doing to help stop some of the violence here in Wilmington?
Every Azalea Festival, we have a Stop the Violence, Stop the Peace rally, which is very, very crowded. We usually have over 500 people in attendance.
What is that, a rally?
So we have a lot of musical performances that I feel like can inspire the people in the community. We have a lot of like bouncy houses, free food. We give out Stop the Violence shirts, and we do tie-dye with the shirts and things of that nature. This last one, we had a station where kids can come and color pictures that were in the coloring books. We've also done things in the past where we did a Stop the Violence, One Sign at a Time campaign, where we put Stop the Violence signs at destinations where people have died due to violence. And so from there, it went from memorials where people have died due to violence to in front of people's neighborhoods, their front yards and businesses' front windows. And then we actually were able to partner up with a few other different organizations. We partnered up with No Limit Sports to produce a Put the Guns Down, Pick the Gloves Up event where we brought in a professional boxer that's from Wilmington. His name is Lamar Russ. He's a frat brother of mine, and he came in and put on pretty much a training camp for that day, taught people how to work out and how to a couple tips and tricks on like self-defense and everything. And then we had the inflatable boxing gloves and let the kids kind of go at it. And we've done something. We've done a Queen for a Queen project with the domestic violence shelter. That's actually on the show as well. And we were able to provide some queen-size beds to some people that were leaving out of the domestic violence shelter going into their homes.
Do you feel like you're making a difference? You're making an impact?
People tell me that. I feel like I haven't done anything yet. I know where I want to go. And so
where do you want to go? What's your vision? Because I want you to be successful.
I want to be able to go all around the world and do this work. Wilmington is just kind of my demo because I'm from here, from my family, and I can really find out results a little faster if the work is being impactful or not.
Okay. So what more do you plan to do in the schools, or how are you going to partner with New Hanover County Schools?
Like I said, we're working on our next edition of the coloring book, which is about the people, which I feel like will be a little bit more engaging than just the buildings. That's something that I really, really want to push, because during your time in school, you really don't learn about African American history and especially local African American
history of Wilmington.
And I feel like that's sad, because a lot of the history that started here in Wilmington isn't just significant here in Wilmington. It's significant on a state level and also on a national level. So
you mean the 1898 riots and so forth?
No. So for me, when people talk about the 1898 riots or like the Wilmington 10, that's just two events. Those were really like 2 days, and in a lot of years, I'm talking about the people that were here before 1898 happened, and some of the people that tried to bring Wilmington back to where it was before 1898, and those people, I feel like there's not a platform or a big spotlight on those people that made Wilmington as significant as they are.
And if students learn about that history, how do you think it will help them?
It will empower them. It will let them know what lives inside of them. They walk the same hallways, the same streets, the same sidewalks as these significant people that they have in them, the same thing that these people have in them. And they actually have more resources, but you ask kids, they don't think so. So I think it's very empowering to know who you are and what's distilled in you and around you.
Right. They have something to be proud of.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So as a community leader, what are some of the challenges you face when you're trying to do these things? I
face the challenge of community leader, to be honest, because I don't know where that title came from. I didn't.
Say that again. The challenge is being labeled as a community leader?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because I really feel like only in the black community they appoint a leader in the community. And why can't I just be a businessman? Why can't I just be somebody that runs an organization or runs a business? Why do I now have to hold the weight of the whole community on my shoulders? And some things I can't control, some things I can control. I'm just doing what I can within the skills and talents that God has put on me. But a lot of the challenges is carrying certain things on your shoulder that you maybe didn't expect that you were going to have to wear the hat for.
Well, hopefully you're not the only one. There
Right.
are
No, not at all.
a lot of other good young men doing things.
Yes, it is. It's a lot.
Like Travis Corpening and
I actually work with Travis at Cape Fear. I'm the assistant coordinator of the Nixon Minority Male Leadership Center.
So there you go.
Yeah, so I actually get the pleasure every day of being able to have a mentor like Travis right next door to me. Our offices are side by side. So yeah.
So what are some bright spots that you've seen?
Some bright spots that I've seen is that I'm not the only one in this space.
Well, there you go.
And but you ask people, sometimes they may make it seem like it is, but that's not the case. It's a lot of men working in black men working in a positive space to help the growth of Wilmington and turn into a greater Wilmington on a very diverse scale. So
well, we can help begin to highlight that, because I think so too. I think I find that a lot of the news is about negative things that African American males do, but there are a lot of very positive things that black men are doing in this community.
Yes, totally.
And they need to be highlighted.
Yeah, I agree. And so
our children can have someone to look up to.
Exactly. And so with Support the Port, we try to sometimes utilize our platform to highlight those individuals and partner up and show the community what these people are doing and how you can help to continue to make sure that they grow and continue to do what they're doing.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about that. This is a great opportunity for our audience to hear about long-standing and new violence prevention efforts with these great people who are my guests today. Next, we'll find out how you can reach out to get involved with these two organizations. Stay tuned.
Start your day with New Hanover County Schools, the morning show. This Rise and Shine program will put a smile on your face and a spring in your step. Best of all, you'll start the day a little smarter. The morning show features an exciting 6-hour mix of exclusive features, cooking, entertainment, news, science, math, and more. New Hanover County Schools, the morning show, educating all viewers to achieve today and tomorrow in a global community. Only on this channel.
Welcome back to Diversity Matters. Today we're talking with Mr. Cedric Harrison, founder of Support the Port, Ms. Andrea Stowe, who's an advocate for domestic violence, and Rick Houston, also a prevention specialist with the Domestic Violence Shelter and Services here in Wilmington. So you all are such dynamic organizations. I'd like to know, have you done any collaborations or partnerships together?
Well, yes. When we first started, we were able to put together an initiative called the Queen for a Queen Project.
Queen for a Queen.
Yeah, where we were able to provide queen-size beds to a couple of the domestic violence survivors leaving out of the shelter, going into their homes. And so I was able to come across that from a friend, a native of Wilmington that's actually black and is a business owner. He owns a mattress shop in Charlotte and in the Fayetteville area, and just saw what Support the Port was doing and wanted to give back. And we was like, who would be appreciative of a nice bed or what have you, and that would be a good gesture for them. And we couldn't think about anybody else except for some domestic violence survivors or what have you.
How successful was it?
It was very successful to the point where we wanted to continue to do it, but the business actually had run into some minor problems. So now we're trying to look for some local areas to do it. But it was very successful. The lady appreciated it a lot, and we know that it's an expense, living by yourself and going back into that space, and already having to pay for room and board, but then beds and bed sets and everything like that cost as well. So I think as we continue to do it, it will be very successful.
Okay. Now, I know in the nonprofit world, there's always this scramble for dollars. You do this great work, and there's always, you're looking for money and support. Tell our viewing audience what you need, what they can do to support.
So sometimes, yes, dollars definitely help. There's always a need, but it's also time and energy and showing up for things. I know that is difficult. We all have a lot on our plates, but just being there, that means a lot to the faces and the people that we're serving, to know that someone cares. We are always in need of small denomination gas cards, because it is the little things. When someone's left an abusive relationship and they are trying to rebuild, I'm always in amazement of what it takes to really do that. We have a small food pantry because those are the things that are really difficult, and they do take a lot of our resources away. We are always in need of someone. We have all of these wonderful programs and we just can't man them all ourselves. So having someone that can be there, and again, just that support of saying that I care about what you're doing, I know that goes a long way. So when we know that community partners are doing those things, we want to be there. We want to have that sign up. We want to say we care about what Support the Port's doing, because it is amazing. Those coloring books are amazing, and they are educating. They're feeding a gap that we just don't have. Right. And that someone's doing it. We want to know that that's there, and we want to support it.
Right, such a unique and creative project.
Yeah.
I think one of the issues is people just don't know. You know, people,
Right.
as much outreach as you do, there's still all these people who don't know, and I know that because I'm a communications director. So tell me, how can we help get the word out? What do you do to reach out to people so they do know? Like, I know so many of our students would come, so many of our teachers would come to your events, but they don't know about them. So what can we do to
We're trying
that?
to use social media through churches and also with the school system to reach out. But also, it's something that Andrea said is about time with some of the prevention stuff that we're doing, especially in the school system. Someone who have time to maybe to volunteer, because when we look at prevention, what we're trying to do is it gives kids knowledge. The same thing Cedric is doing, is that do events to bring about knowledge, because if we can give them knowledge about how to do prevention work, about how it's impacting the community, then we'll hopefully, it's going to bring about awareness to the problems, but also it'll change the attitudes too. So if we can change attitudes, then hopefully your belief system change. And when the belief system change, then we do things differently. So often, so we need volunteers to come in and to support the work that Andrea is doing, support the work that I'm doing, also Cedric is doing, to reach out to really to a broader community, because oftentimes we're only hitting a certain segment, but if we can reach more, then I think we can make a bigger difference.
And you can always find us at supportttheport.com. We're having our event. We have an event tab, and we have like a support tab. You can get our cool shirts and marketing merchandise.
Okay.
I'm good, need a shirt.
Well, we'll be looking for you all.
Yeah, we have, of course, this is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, so we have several events taking place.
Right.
On
October 12th.
Yeah, October 12th, I'll take back tonight a marching rally
Well,
downtown
send those to
Wilmington.
the school system, and we'll help get the word out.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you all so much for what you do. I'm so excited that you're here and you're doing what you're doing. Thank you for being with us today. New Hanover County Schools certainly values the partnerships with your community groups, such as domestic violence, Support the Port, and we just want to strengthen those for our students, for our teachers, for our whole community who really need the services that you all are providing. If you have ideas for a future issue of Diversity Matters, feel free to call the New Hanover County Schools Public Relations Department at 254-4245 if you have questions or you want to follow up about something you learned today. And I'll see you again next month for an all-new edition of Diversity Matters. Thanks for watching.